Just changing gears and moving to your stint in government, which you spoke about in your opening comments. Now, that was an amazing step. In 2009, you were running a very successful business and a respected organization, and you chose to leave Infosys and take the role of chairman of UID, the Unique ID Authority of India, a cabinet rank position, no doubt. And you were actually invited by the then Prime Minister of the country. So, what was it that drew you to taking this role?
Well, I've always been inspired by public service. I've always felt that I should do something in public service. I had a very successful run as the CEO of Infosys. I was at that time in my early 50s, and I thought I could do something transformational for the country. And I was very fortunate that then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh invited me to do this project. And I felt this was something I could do. And it was actually a very big change for me, Balaji. I was, at a nice corner office overlooking a golf course, and I gave all that up. I moved from Bangalore to Delhi. I moved from a company with a few 100,000 people to a startup inside the government. I didn't even have an office of my own. I had a small room which the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, Montek, had given us. And I had to assemble a team of talent. So it was quite an uphill task. But we took it as a challenge. And what I learned in life is that if you set yourself some bold, ambitious goals, then that itself attracts people, because people out there want to make a difference to society. People out there are looking for a chance to be part of something huge. So I was able to attract a phenomenal set of people, both from within the government as well as from outside. And we were able to blend this very diverse crowd into an organization that focused single-mindedly on ensuring that we give an ID to every Indian. And by the time I resigned from the government 5 years later, 600 million people had been issued the ID, and subsequently the new government came. The new government under Prime Minister Modi was equally enthused by this project. And today 1.3 billion people have the ID. They do 50 million authentications a day. They do 5 million KYCs a day to open bank accounts and to get mobile connections. And I think we have transformed the country with technology.
And then absolutely, I totally agree with you. I've had the fortune of having interacted with you in those days as well. And the infectious energy that you had, I think, rubbed off on your team that you kind of attracted. I think in India, we are very familiar with what the biometric identity has done for the country. But as I mentioned, there are colleagues that have joined, friends have joined from 20 other countries. Maybe if you could just give some illustrations on how common citizens, what changed really in their life before Aadhaar came in and after.
Sure, Balaji. I think we have to realize that often in many countries, including India, everybody does not have a birth certificate. In fact, there were some states in India where more than half the births, people didn't have birth certificate. And that was fine in the days when you lived your entire life in the same village. But as societies became more mobile and migrational, having an ID was very important. And we had to go back and make sure everybody had some kind of an ID. It had to be, and we said if we're doing an ID in the 21st century, we should do a digital ID, which can be verified online. So this is an ID that says John is John, and you can verify that John is John online over the mobile network using a biometric device like a fingerprint reader or an iris scanner or even a face recognition method, face authentication method. So this is something which is very useful because this is nationally applicable. So a young man in Bihar can get his Aadhaar ID, and then when he comes to the city and tries to apply for a job, he can show his ID and the person offering the job can verify the ID online. Or if you want to withdraw money in a village, we have a device by which you can authenticate yourself using the ID, and the neighborhood business correspondent can give you money from his account. And that system alone does 100 million transactions a month with about 3 to 4 billion US dollars a month that is withdrawn using this method. So this having an ID is very important, and having a digital ID particularly became useful in the pandemic, because now without meeting somebody, you could verify your ID. And we also had the ID as a basis for a cash transfer initiative. So India runs the world's largest direct benefit transfer system. And during the pandemic, again, it has been hugely effective because the government can transfer money in a matter of almost in real time into the bank accounts of people with IDs. So this is all this has helped in a dramatic way, especially after the pandemic.
I think, Nandan, you also made sure that the middlemen that probably ate a lot of the direct beneficiary transfers also got eliminated, right, at the bargain.
Yes, the whole thing was that once I can transfer money electronically into somebody's bank account in real time, then essentially there is no middleman. The money goes direct. So and the person can go to any BC in the country and withdraw money. So nobody can control their lives. And therefore, the empowerment that it has got, the reduction in corruption, the efficiency it has brought into the system has been huge.
Fantastic, Nandan. You touched upon it a little bit about moving from a totally unregulated industry like IT to bureaucracy. Was there a lot of adjustment that you needed to in your leadership style to take people along? I mean, it's so much tougher, right? When you
well, it's definitely much more complex in the public space, because in the private space, at the end of the day, you are running an organization. The organization has business goals. The organization wants to increase revenues, make profits, reduce costs, increase earnings per share, and all that stuff. But in the government, there's no one definition of success. So you have to be clear about what success is. Success to one may be a failure to the other guy. Second thing is that it's a lot of actors in a public space, right? You have government employees, you have bureaucrats, you have politicians, you have activists, you have journalists, you have judges, lawyers, you have companies. Everybody has a stake in the game. And therefore, coming out with a strategy which allowed everyone to be aligned, so they all put their weight behind this, and making sure that there was no negative coalition against you, and making sure that you carried everybody together. The consensus building in the public space is order of magnitude higher than in the private space. So a lot of my time actually was spent in consensus building and getting people aligned. And I was very fortunate that I had Ram Sevak Sharma, who later on you know as Chairman of TRAI and currently the CEO of the National Health Authority. He was my CEO. So he actually ran the project, and I focused on aligning all stakeholders.
Brilliant. It was a partnership that actually worked wonders for the project, and more importantly, the nation as a whole. So absolutely.